sky over the West Philippine Sea has been busy again, and that alone tells a story. A MQ-4C Triton of the United States Navy, tail number 169307 and call sign CNV-236, has departed Kadena Air Base on a long-range surveillance mission focused on Scarborough Shoal. That flight path is not accidental. Scarborough sits at the heart of one of the most sensitive maritime fault lines in Asia, and when a high-altitude ISR platform shows up, it signals sustained attention. Not a one-off signal, but a pattern. This patrol fits squarely into a persistent intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance campaign designed to keep the maritime picture clear in contested waters. The Triton's job is not dramatic, it is relentless. From high altitude and long endurance, it tracks vessel movements in real time, monitors unusual activity near disputed features, and builds an accurate, continuous record of what is happening at sea, day after day, not just during crises. Beyond deterrence signaling, the mission has practical objectives. The Triton supports maritime domain awareness by identifying commercial traffic, Coast Guard vessels, and other surface contacts operating within and around contested zones. It also contributes to search and rescue coordination, environmental monitoring, and maritime safety, functions that are often overlooked but critical in busy sea lanes where accidents, spills, or coercive encounters can escalate quickly if left unseen. Most importantly, the data collected does not stay on board. Information from these flights feeds directly into Allied naval and air units, helping commanders make informed tactical and strategic decisions in near real time. In a region where freedom of navigation and secure sea lines of communication are constantly tested, this kind of ISR coverage underpins the broader effort by the United States and its partners to maintain stability in international waters. The Triton's presence over the West Philippine Sea is not about spectacle. It is about watching continuously so nothing happens unnoticed. And in today's strategic environment, that quiet vigilance is one of the most powerful tools at sea. Scarborough Shoal sits in the West Philippine Sea, part of the wider South China Sea, one of the most contested maritime regions on the planet. The surrounding waters are subject to overlapping claims by the Philippines, China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan. This density of claims turns even routine patrols into strategic signals, where geography and politics are inseparable. The stakes are enormous. The South China Sea carries roughly 1/3 of global maritime trade, with annual flows exceeding $3 trillion. Energy shipments, container traffic, and raw materials that fuel East Asian and global economies all pass through these sea lanes. Any disruption, whether from conflict, coercion, or miscalculation, would ripple far beyond the region. This is why distant powers watch these waters almost as closely as the claimant states themselves. Economic interests further sharpen tensions. The area is home to some of the richest fishing grounds in Asia, sustaining millions of livelihoods, while also holding potential hydrocarbon reserves that could shape future energy security. Control over access, not just ownership, has become a central driver of maritime behavior, especially where enforcement at sea determines who fishes, surveys, or drills, and who is pushed out. Against this backdrop, regular patrols by high-end ISR platforms like the MQ-4C Triton are not routine flights. They are barometers of tension. Persistent surveillance reflects ongoing disputes over territorial waters and exclusive economic zones, where presence itself can influence outcomes. In a region where maps are contested and narratives clash, the ability to see clearly and continuously has become a strategic asset in its own right. The MQ-4C Triton is the backbone of the United States Navy's high-end maritime surveillance architecture. Developed by Northrop Grumman, Triton is a high-altitude, long-endurance, hail, unmanned aircraft designed specifically to watch vast ocean spaces continuously, something satellites alone cannot do, and manned aircraft cannot sustain without risk or fatigue. While derived from the U.S. Air Force's RQ-4 Global Hawk, Triton is a distinctly naval system, hardened and optimized for maritime ISR missions. What sets Triton apart is persistence. With over 24 hours of continuous endurance, the aircraft can loiter over contested waters for an entire day, maintaining an unbroken picture of vessel movements. Operating at altitudes above 50,000 feet, it remains well outside the reach of most surface-based threats while scanning enormous areas below. Its intercontinental range, exceeding 7,400 nautical miles, allows it to launch from distant bases and still cover sensitive zones like the West Philippine Sea without forward basing. Physically, Triton is massive for an unmanned system. A wingspan of roughly 130.9 feet gives it the lift needed for long-duration flight, while a cruising speed of around 320 knots enables rapid repositioning when activity spikes. This combination of height, reach, and endurance makes Triton less of a drone and more of an airborne surveillance node, quietly persistent rather than visibly aggressive. Operationally, Triton does not work alone. It is designed to operate in close coordination with the P-8A Poseidon, forming a complementary manned-unmanned ISR team. Triton provides the wide-area, long-duration maritime picture, identifying patterns and anomalies, while the P-8A conducts focused investigations, classification, and response when needed. Together, they maximize coverage, shorten response times, and reduce risk to air crews, creating a surveillance network that is both efficient and resilient. In regions like the West Philippine Sea, where activity is constant and escalation risks are real, the MQ-4C Triton's true value lies in this quiet persistence. It watches continuously, connects sensors to decision makers, and ensures that what happens at sea does not go unseen. What makes the MQ-4C Triton strategically valuable is not just how long it flies, but how much it can see and understand while airborne. At the core of its sensor suite is the ANZPY-3 Multifunction Active Sensor, MFAS, radar, capable of scanning millions of square miles in a single sortie. This wide-area radar coverage allows Triton to detect surface contacts across vast ocean spaces that would otherwise require multiple manned aircraft or satellite passes. That radar picture is fused with electro-optical and infrared cameras, enabling visual identification and tracking once a contact of interest is detected. Electronic support measures add another layer, allowing the aircraft to sense and classify electromagnetic emissions, radars, communications, and other signals, providing insight into what vessels are doing, not just where they are. Integration with the automatic identification system further helps distinguish legitimate commercial traffic from suspicious or non-cooperative vessels. These systems allow Triton to detect, classify, and persistently track maritime targets across enormous oceanic areas. The current mission reflects this full-spectrum capability in action. The aircraft launched from Kadena Air Base, identified as MQ-4C Triton, call sign CNV-236, and proceeded towards Scarborough Shoal and its surrounding waters. This focus area is not incidental. Scarborough remains one of the most politically sensitive maritime features in the West Philippine Sea. Flights of this type typically follow autonomous patrol patterns optimized to maximize radar and sensor coverage, while streaming data in near real-time to command centers. Reporting indicates that information from this patrol is being shared with regional partners, enhancing collective maritime situational awareness rather than remaining siloed within U.S. systems. Strategically, the deployment sends several layered signals. First, it reinforces the U.S. commitment to Indo-Pacific security, demonstrating that monitoring contested waters is a continuous effort, not a crisis-only response.
Considering the threats from the Communist Chinese, and that friends need to stand shoulder to shoulder to deter conflict, to ensure that there's free navigation. Whether you call it the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea, we recognize that your country has stand very firm in that location and in defense of your nations.
Persistent ISR patrols support international maritime norms, including those enshrined in UNCLOS, by documenting activity in international waters and exclusive economic zones. Second, Triton provides early warning and deterrence through visibility. Its endurance enables near-continuous observation, allowing unusual movements or unsafe behavior to be identified well before they escalate into confrontations. In contested maritime spaces, early detection often determines whether an incident is managed calmly or spirals into crisis. Third, Triton acts as a force multiplier. By handling long-duration surveillance, it frees up manned platforms for missions that require human judgment, rapid response, or specialized tasks. This makes overall air and naval operations more efficient while reducing risk to personnel. Regionally, leaders and analysts tend to view such patrols as stabilizing rather than escalatory. Persistent ISR supports partners like the Philippines and Japan by helping them monitor their EEZs with higher fidelity than they could achieve alone. Credible, shared surveillance discourages risky behavior by increasing the likelihood that actions at sea will be observed, recorded, and assessed objectively. These patrols also slot into broader regional security frameworks that emphasize exercises, interoperability, and data sharing. U.S. officials frequently stress that persistent surveillance enhances strategic predictability and operational transparency, both of which are essential to crisis prevention in crowded maritime environments. Despite its strengths, Triton operations are not without constraints. Weather and environmental conditions, including tropical storms, cyclones, and high sea states, can degrade sensor performance and complicate flight operations. Politically, flying near disputed areas can trigger diplomatic protests, particularly from actors who interpret persistent ISR as provocative, even when conducted in international airspace. There are also technical and logistical demands. Secure data links must be maintained across long distances, aircraft require specialized maintenance, and effective coordination with allies depends on robust infrastructure and planning. The system's effectiveness is therefore inseparable from the networks and institutions that support it. The patrol over the West Philippine Sea should be understood as one node in a much larger operational pattern, not a standalone event. The MQ-4C Triton has increasingly been used by the United States Navy as a global maritime domain awareness asset, tasked with watching vast ocean spaces where persistent visibility is more valuable than episodic presence. Its deployment cadence reflects a shift away from crisis-driven ISR toward continuous, theater-wide monitoring. Beyond the Indo-Pacific, Tritons have conducted long-duration ISR missions over the Caribbean Sea, where they supported counter-narcotics operations, maritime traffic monitoring, and regional security awareness. These flights demonstrated the platform's ability to operate effectively in very different operational environments, tracking small, fast-moving vessels in congested waters one month and monitoring broad maritime approaches the next. The lesson is clear. Triton is not optimized for a single adversary or region, but for persistent maritime surveillance wherever sea control and law enforcement intersect. This versatility is precisely why the U.S. Navy is scaling the program. The activation of a second Triton squadron, VUP-11, marks an inflection point. It signals that Triton has moved beyond the experimental or limited deployment phase and into routine force structure. A second squadron enables sustained global tasking, rotational coverage across the Indo-Pacific, Atlantic, and Caribbean, without overburdening a single unit or fleet of aircraft. From a strategic planning perspective, this expansion matters. A single squadron can demonstrate capability. Multiple squadrons enable persistence at scale. It allows the Navy to maintain continuous ISR in priority theaters while retaining surge capacity elsewhere. In practical terms, it means that a Triton orbit over the West Philippine Sea does not come at the expense of coverage in other regions. A critical requirement as maritime competition becomes more global and less episodic. These missions illustrate how the MQ-4C Triton has become a core pillar of the U.S. Navy's global ISR architecture. Its role is no longer niche or supplementary. Instead, it functions as the wide-area eyes of the fleet, quietly building a continuous maritime picture that informs operations, supports allies, and reduces strategic surprise. In an era where competition plays out daily rather than episodically, that kind of persistent awareness is not just useful, it is foundational. The MQ-4C Triton's presence over the West Philippine Sea is far more than a routine flight. It reflects a sustained commitment to persistent, high-end ISR in contested waters, and illustrates how unmanned systems are reshaping maritime security by combining endurance, sensor fusion, and alliance integration. As regional competition intensifies, platforms like Triton are likely to remain central, not because they escalate tensions, but because they reduce uncertainty, deter miscalculation, and ensure that critical maritime spaces are never left unseen. If you found this analysis valuable, share your perspective in the comments. Your insights help deepen the conversation and sharpen our understanding of evolving regional dynamics. Thank you, and we will see you soon in our next geopolitical discussion.